support. Without the Voice and Viewpoint in our partnership, we would not be where we're at today. So I want to say thank you so much. Again, it is a step of faith in everything that we do, and we still are having some issues that are taking place. We haven't got everything in place at this point, but we are slowly but surely making everything come in order. And I just ask everybody as we're making the transition that bear with us. We got to get all the technology back up and running. Tonight we're via Zoom, as well as we are on Facebook, and YouTube on several formats. But tonight is going to be focused on, the picture is Dr. Warren on Zoom, and on Facebook it is Dr. Warren and myself. And Dr. Warren, you know how it is. Anytime you move after 22 years, it's just a whole bunch of work to be
A
done.
lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. Well, we're excited about the move. As I was telling Dr. Thompson, if we didn't have a toothache, we'd never go to the dentist.
Yeah.
And so this move is a much nicer facility than where they were. The Lord really stepped in and blessed them with it. And it's closer. And I think everyone who gets a chance to visit here is going to be excited about the expanded possibilities that exist. Even as we talk with you, we're making some plans to take this program national through the NNPA streaming live view and expanding our audience. And we have some exciting times in mind as we move towards scheduled guests and addressing a number of issues, because if there's life, there are issues. And so we're here to talk about them, and we're very excited to have the opportunity to do so. One of the first things I want to mention is it looks like we should be in a celebratory mood for Congresswoman Karen Bass, who is now mayor-elect of Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
And that's a very significant move because this is a sister who beat out a billionaire in terms of getting elected to that post, and I think it's been called for her right now. And she's had a distinguished career there in Los Angeles, and she went to the Assembly, State Senate, to Congress, and now the mayor of one of the largest cities in the nation. And, from my years on Capitol Hill, there were a couple of things that were step-ups. If you went from Congress to be mayor of New York or Los Angeles, then that was considered a step up and not a step back. And so we're very excited. We have a number of stories evolving in California. We have some cities that have black mayors for the first time, I understand, and so we're looking at doing something on that in the very near future. We also had some wake-up calls as we saw the Congress move through, or we saw the nation move through dealing with the election night continuation of counting ballots. And it was surprising to me to see just how many Republicans, members of Congress, won races and beat out incumbents and won races in Northern California, reminding me that our state is not as blue as we think. At the same time, we have 3 African Americans in what's referred to as constitutional offices in the state. One being the Secretary of State with Dr. Shirley Weber, second one being the Superintendent of Public Instruction with Tony Thurman, and the third being Malia Cohen as the controller. And it looks like she's going to hold on to her lead in terms of winning that position. So that's a very significant accomplishment for us, and it really reinforces that we have not gone away. There were all kinds of rumors that we were going to lose L.A. and that black political leadership was dead in California, and that's not true. We're still here. We still count. And if one thing everyone should have learned from the votes and the election on the 8th is that every vote counts. Mm-hmm. Every vote. And there was, Dr. Thompson, there's at least one city where there was a tie, and the people had written into the charter or the Constitution that where there was a tie vote, where the people had the same number of votes, the decision was to be made with a toss of a coin.
Yeah, I did see that. I did see that.
Yeah.
And that lets you know that, being in politics is a gamble. Being in politics, many times you have to realize that it is a choice that you've made to be there, and learning how to play the rules. We were surprised at how many Republicans did win, but it wasn't a red wave as it was predicted. It was more like a red, sprinkle, maybe a misting. But more than anything else is that it doesn't take much. Either you're in control of the House or you're not in control of the House. You're either in control of the Senate or you're not. It don't matter if you get in by the hair of your chinny chin chin, as long as you get in. And I think that what people have to understand is that there is a changing taking place throughout America that is being exasperated as the former president is trying to re-announce that he is going to run.
Well, yes, and I think that time is catching up with him. I think it didn't go off the way he wanted it to, but I'm concerned that we lost the House by such a small number of votes.
Yeah.
And I tried to share with people here as we went through pre-election orientation and articles and stories that every vote counts. Every vote counts. And we had a very low voter turnout here, and it could have made a difference. We saw what happened in Georgia. Stacey Abrams, again, did not win to be governor of Georgia, but yet there were enough people in Georgia, if they had voted for her, enough black people in particular, to have made it happen. We saw Val Dennings get wiped out early in Florida, and I think a lot of people didn't realize what a red state Florida is. But the blacks in Florida, in the South, in Broward County, in the Miami-Dade area, and up in the northern corner next to Georgia, rest of the place is just totally red. So we get DeSantis again, Marco Rubio again, and but yet we have the success of having our first black governor of the state of Maryland, young man named Wes Moore, who is just phenomenal in terms of the coalition he put together to make it happen. So we got good stories coming out of this.
Well, what about the young African American, 25 years old, who won his congressional seat?
Was he African American?
Yes. Yes.
In was it Florida?
I'm gonna pull it up.
I'm trying to remember where
sure.
because I know they were boasting about the fact that he was the youngest person to get elected to Congress, and I don't think that's factually correct. When I was on the Hill 40 years ago, there was a young man that came in, and I don't know if I thought he was like 25, maybe he was 26 that got elected to Congress, and it was just kind of interesting because on the House floor, once he got his credentials, he had to keep them with him because every time he tried to go on the floor, security thought he was a page because he looked so young. And so I heard some of the comments from this young man, and his head is certainly on his shoulders right. He has a sensitivity and an interest in the issues, and so I think that it's a good move. And I think that we need, America is a combination of both our young people and those of us who are elders. And I think there's a mixture of the two that really brings it together and makes it work. So it's not about, getting rid of one for the other.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed is that those people that are really being successful are the ones that basically understand how to cross lines. And what I mean by cross lines, be able to blend the young and the old and the middle age to go across and literally do things that are part of bringing us together as a community. So this is the young man right here.
Okay.
His name is Maxwell Frost.
All right.
He look African American to me.
Yeah, I thought
maybe he's a mixture.
I think he's a mixture.
Okay.
I think he's a mixture. But the important thing is that he's there. He's young. He has an opportunity, and I hope that he's anchored in terms of being able to really make a contribution. So we have, we need to get more young people here in California, even here in San Diego, interested, not for the idea of I want an office and I want a title, but we want people who have an interest and a desire to serve and to be of service. I think I was 27 when I was first elected to office in D.C., 27 or 28. And I had a district that had probably a couple of 100,000 people in it. And I got elected walking and knocking on doors and talking to people. When I ran for the state assembly and for California State Senate here, I walked and I knocked on doors. When I ran for the Senate, I probably knocked on just about every door between here and Imperial Beach, in terms of trying to reach people. And it's a hard job campaigning, but it's an educational job in terms of meeting people, because you meet people that you would not have met otherwise, and you learn a lot just by the moments that you spend with folks. And that's what representative government should be about. Not about somebody just throwing a lot of money out there like with Herschel Walker, importing someone who has no business even being near a microphone, and pretending that that's going to represent people in one of the most important and prestigious positions in the nation.
So let me ask you this question. How do we prepare for the future at this point? We just went through the midterm elections. We have 2 years now for us to elect a new president. The funny thing is that people have been campaigning for the last year or so, or even some people right when they lost before, they're back in on the campaign trail raising money. How do we prepare this new demographic, this new age of young people to be prepared to lead in the future, or even yet in the present? Because there are a lot of young people I see now that have great sound bites, know how to use social media, but to me do not have any depths on policy, don't have any depths on how to negotiate, build consensus, things that don't always make you feel warm and fuzzy and get you likes.
Well, the question goes very deep, and it's not just for California, Dr. Thompson. I noticed when I first got elected to Board of Education in Washington, D.C., that the civic curriculum was not designed to encourage future participation in the political process.
Okay.
And neither is it here. They just kind of gloss and touch. But in terms of having people understand what a city council is, the board of supervisors, I worked with people when I came to San Diego, and I was in county council office. I worked with people who had never been to Sacramento, did not know the difference between the city council and the board of supervisors. And so it's because people who live here are not given any reason to think that it's important. And I want to put a pin in that and do a contrast with the immigrant population that comes here.
Okay.
Okay, because I noticed many years ago with the Mexican immigrant population, if you look at, they used to be, if you looked at the Mexican TV stations, Uniworld and the others, they were constantly running commercials for citizenship kits. And you could buy a $75 citizenship kit, and it taught you everything about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and all of these things in terms of how government is organized, the political systems, and the whole bit. Most of us don't pay attention to any of that until we have a crisis. Then we want to grab a sign, we want to go to a meeting, we want to holler, scream, raise hell, and go home. And in my years of sitting on a podium in front of crowds, when they came in with those kind of issues, I could look at the people in the audience and tell you how long they were going to stay there and almost pinpoint with a bet who was going to leave and what time, because they don't have a need. They don't understand the relationship. And so this wave that we've gone through, this extreme right-wing entity, I'm thinking one of the best things in a sense that happened was a pandemic that brought folks together and brought people out in protest who otherwise would not have been. The Black Lives Matter movement, when you look at the fact that it had such a tremendous number of young whites that were involved in it, and not only here in this country, but I remember incidents, and I believe it was in London, in England, where there was a demonstration taking place. And of course, there was a large group of young white folks there, and a white guy passed out, and a black guy in the crowd picked him up, put him over his shoulder, and carried him to a first aid station. And so the young people are more interested in working together. There's this old element that is afraid of the blackening and the browning and what they call the yellowing of America, that wants to try to turn the clock back. And so we need to, in answer to your question, we need to get people engaged so that they understand that your voice is important, that your decisions are important. And if you don't make a decision in terms of being at the table, then you're going to be on the menu. And that which is on the menu does not last beyond the meal.
Yeah, and so one of the things that when you begin to look at where we are, the question always is going to come up: do people have the same drive to really lead a new nation? And because for me, there's a fear of the browning and the blackening of America, and they're attacking the people that they see, but no one seems to be attacking Hollywood, the advertisers, or any of that stuff. I don't know about you, Dr. Warren, but almost every commercial now is biracial.
Well, it is biracial, and I started addressing this, about 15 years ago, because I remember in one of my last sessions on KPBS with my good colleague, the late Gloria Penner, there was a Time magazine cover that had a dollar bill like a raft, and it was on a sea of I guess it was debt or whatever it was, the economy. But on the raft was a black guy and a white woman. And in the advertising business, decisions are made on the basis of focus groups. So it appears at some point a focus group came together and said that we want to see biracial people, we want to see a black man in commercials with white women. And that's significant because we know that if you saw the recent airing of the movie Till, that's what got Emmett Till killed. A white woman who now, 60 years later, confessing that she lied about what happened. And every commercial is moved in that direction. At the same time, since we had the Loving decision, which outlawed, the Supreme Court outlawed miscegenation laws, interracial marriage, the number of interracial marriages has skyrocketed. And in so many instances today, when people look at families, I remember I was with a sister in Fort Lauderdale making a presentation, and she was probably in her 40s, and she was talking about how her family reunion looked like a United Nations. The same thing former President Obama used to say, that his relatives were all over the globe. And so we have interracial families now. This is good for America in terms of the true melting pot that we are, but to the older generation, it's very scary because it's no longer white is right and white privilege and all of those things that allowed them to stay on top at the expense of the equality and rights of other people.
So, but do people, when they go into interracial marriages and relationships, and let me rephrase this question, how do you keep your cultural identity when you're in a biracial or interracial relationship, and you're still trying to simulate so that there seems to be no discrimination?
Well, I can answer that in a particular way. Probably about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, my late wife, Jerry Warren, we ran a special, and she did the research, and we found interracial couples who had been married at least 20 years or more. And it was very interesting in terms of these people because not only was there deep love involved between them, but there was also an effort to preserve and integrate the culture of the two where necessary. And let's just be clear about something. All of that is not just racial, because we've had for a long time the issue of marriages between Catholics and Jews, okay? And families, some families dealt with how the children were going to be raised, some didn't, tried to ignore it in both ways. And so it's an ongoing
So wait a minute,
scenario.
Dr. Warren. You mean to tell me there was an issue between the Jewish folks marrying Catholic folks?
Oh, yes.
What about Presbyterian and
Well,
Jewish?
we'll understand why Jews and Catholics, okay?
Okay.
Because Orthodox Jews have not accepted Christ as the Messiah.
Okay.
So from their standpoint, he hasn't come. And Catholicism is built on Christ and is built on the Pope and Peter and the whole thing that's laid out there. So you got a fundamental disagreement in the foundational premise of the faith,
Okay.
and that's led to the issues that people have.
Mm-hmm.
25 years ago here in San Diego, we had a very strong organization called a Conference of Christian and Jews,
Mm-hmm.
and they would at one point they were the sponsors of the annual Martin Luther King breakfast that we used to have even before we got the King Day as a national holiday.
Yeah.
It fell apart over a period of time because there was a grumbling that the Islamic community was not included. And so once they included the Islamic community, then invariably they ran into the problem at invocation is how do we do this? Because the Catholics want to mention Jesus, the Jews don't want to mention, the Muslims just see him as a prophet. And so again, the religious differences surface and they just kind of nullified the activity. And so to your original question, it all boils down to the individuals that are involved and where they are. I'm concerned today that a lot of us have not raised our children with the same kind of spiritual foundation that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's missing. And we see a lot of things that are taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Today in the Congress, there was a vote in the Senate, in the Senate for a same-sex marriage act
Mm-hmm.
to overcome what is anticipated as a reversal with this conservative Supreme Court of the decision that was made in favor of that. Now, that creates a big problem for a lot of people because some people have tried to equate same-sex marriage and the right to it as the same situation that existed with the miscegenation laws, when there was a law that says black and whites couldn't marry.
Mm-hmm.
And so that got to be a issue. And so then it's how are you going to permit one and not the other?
I got a question. What is the definition of marriage?
Oh, Dr. Thompson, you and I, as members of the clergy, we understand that from our religious foundation, marriage is a covenant relationship, and that there is a difference between a covenant and a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I put on my lawyer's hat for a minute, a contract has three elements. It has offer, acceptance, mutual consideration, and an expiration date. Four elements, really. Okay, a covenant is based on the idea of a commitment between people, if you will. The first big covenant was between God and Abraham back in the 15th and 17th chapters of Genesis. And that represents a life commitment, and it's done by blood being the determining factor. They would kill an animal and pass through the blood of the animal. And the idea of that was that the word says that life is in the blood,
Mm-hmm.
and so blood is the bondage there. If you look at that situation, the marriage that actually takes place in a covenant relationship between a man and a woman following the biblical principle. I got to pause with this for a moment because this is important. The Bible says that for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, get a wife and cling to her, and the two shall become one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the Jewish faith, the male had to be circumcised, and that was his blood contribution for his generation to the covenant that God made with Abraham. On the other end of that was the virginity of the woman was critical because the breaking of the hymen brought her blood into the relationship, and that became her blood contribution to the covenant. And so now the two of them were in a covenant relationship. That's why it says, for better or for worse, to death do us part. So when we move into this same-sex marriage scenario, we can't possibly have a covenant because the elements of covenant are not there in terms of what's required. And it is in violation of the way God established the covenant, which was to produce family. So now the key here is we're making an observation in terms of the importance historically, biblically, socially, but we're not now condemning the people who go for those relationships because from our standpoint, yours and mine as clergy, God has given us the opportunity to make a choice. So we're not to be haters or to be mad with people because they don't choose the way that we present it. We're in the notice business. We give people notice and opportunity, and then they make the decision, and we still have an obligation to love them and move forward. But those relationships beyond that is between them and God.
And I think that's what's really important. And the thing that troubles me sometimes is that everything that is one way, when people decide they want it to be there or include them, it's like, okay, we have marriage. You guys can say union. You could do something different to signify where you feel that you're at. But it always seems to be an attack, number one, on the church covenants and an attack on the church as a whole. And to me, we don't have to attack each other. If you want to get together, there's some people that don't even say they're husband and wife. Some people that are man and woman will say, oh, those we're partners.
Well, that's a very important point too, Dr. Thompson, because what happened here, I think some of our listeners, and we want to encourage people to call in if they want to, but some of our listeners will remember a TV series called The Golden Girls, and it's still running now. And that's a story of three women who came together and decided to live together because of their fellowship, their friendship, and their economics and the whole bit. And there are people in real life who've done that. What happened some years ago, though, is that people who were in those partnerships, if you will, when something happened to one and they had to go to the hospital, this became very prevalent during the AIDS epidemic, because the second person was not related, the hospitals, the system would not acknowledge them. And so we had the passage of a partnership act, which gave those rights to people who weren't married, but who were close enough in terms of their friendship to be life partners so they could help each other. That made all kinds of sense in terms of a secular approach to a very real problem that had legal consequences. But then other folks decided that wasn't enough. And that's when we moved into this whole marriage scenario, which has taken off since then. A lot of that community became very politically active and involved. I remember there were two major cases that occurred. One was a baker that refused to make a cake for such a wedding, and they put them out of business. Another was a photographer who refused to shoot the wedding, separate weddings, and they got attacked. Then the church became frightful. And a lot of our churches today in this country have gone back to their bylaws and written in provisions that say that they have the right to refuse marriage to anyone. And so it's gotten off track, okay? And this is unfortunate.
So here is my question, and I know that this is going to sound crazy, but at some point, do heterosexuals feel bullied to accept all the nuances that the LGBTQIA community, or LGBTQI, I keep saying IA because they had all those letters at one point, but LGBT have put in place? There is a pressure that takes place, and it seems like it's going all over that says you have to put your pronouns behind your name.
Well,
and I'm like saying that, but if you don't, then people look at you like you're making a judgment call. And I feel at some point, is that not bullying?
I think the pronoun thing is totally ridiculous. That's my personal view about it. And I see people doing it. And I'm surprised at some of the people who do it, because what you're doing is buying into something that somebody told you have to do. See, there's a difference between this idea of what's political correct. Who makes the decision? Yeah. Don't you know who you are in terms of what you are and how you identify yourself? And all of those little things are done because of the transgender and what. Well, from my standpoint, there are more issues in life than arguing with somebody over what lifestyle choice they've made. They made the choice. We respect the choice. We love them if we can, as their friends. I have family members that are in the LGBTQ community, and a lot of people do. Yeah. And so I don't have to go judging and hope. We're obligated to love people and deal with where we are. Mm-hmm. San Diego, is one of the. We probably have the largest LGBTQ community turnout annual parade, gay pride stuff, in any place in the country. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the gay pride community became politically active and made the decision that if you weren't making laws that supported what they wanted, then they came after folks. And they still do that to some degree. And it's unfortunate. But I don't think the rest of us should be bullied. I think America is based on people having a right to make a choice. And the First Amendment right says it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
You got to respect other people's rights the same way you want them to respect yours.
And I think that's what's going to be important moving forward. There's so many dividing lines that are trying their best to separate people with the mindset that how do we come together, how do we love each other, how do we support each other. You know, I see the disconnect between the young and the old, and it's sad because many times the older people they could be set in their ways. But then you have the younger people that don't want to even give it a chance to have uncomfortable conversations. And I tell people all the time, if we don't have uncomfortable conversations, then we can get nowhere. It doesn't matter old, young, gay, straight, Muslim versus Christian. Having those uncomfortable conversations like we have here on the station, like we have here on From the Desk of the Editor, and be able to say, you know what, Dr. Warren, I don't agree with you, but I respect your right to have your opinion. You know, that's where we got to be if we're planning to grow this nation.
Well, and you know what? I think that's important because through Black Men and Women United, we've come together. We went a crisis a few years ago where the young element came in. They wanted to take over and change everything around, and they didn't want to hear from us. And some of them have come around to understand that there's some merit to some of what they missed and what we try to share with them. And I'm encouraged that there's still, let us not dwell on the negative to the extent that we omit the fact that there is a whole generation of young people out there that are motivated. They're doing great things. Yeah. We saw them in Black Lives Matter. We saw them come out and march and deal doing the George Floyd and, John Lewis and all of these things. So, yes, I'm encouraged. And too often the bad guys get too much press and publicity. Yeah. So we're excited. And then I'm remembering we were young at a point. 50 years ago, in my own way, I was there doing a lot of things and wondering why certain things weren't happening. It was the young people that did the lunch counter sit-ins, okay, that desegregated the Woolworths when they didn't want you to let you sit down and have a hot dog and a Coke. We were the ones that were willing to go to jail. And so, and we still miss a lot of what was done. The Panthers started the feeding program. And they had a Ministry of Information, and they were doing all these things. And so a lot of us have gotten comfortable over the years. I just want the young generation to take time to look at what's been done before you, not to be held up by the past, but you need to understand the past if you're going to go forward into the future.
You know what, Dr. Warren, I love about my seniors, my seasoned people is I want to shout out to my grandmother, Elmertha Jones. In her older age, there was absolutely no filter. She said what was on her mind.
Yes.
And it was comical to all of us because the fact she said it, she didn't care how it came out. This is where I'm at. And the coolest thing about the whole thing is the young people, the young family members said, and she's been here for 93 years.
Oh, yeah.
She has earned the right to say what's on her mind.
Yeah.
And I want to say to younger folks, sometimes you're going to run up against that. You know what I'm saying? But when people have been around here for a long time, even if you disagree, they've earned the right to say what's on their mind. And then you have the right to come back and say, I don't agree, but I heard you. See, a lot of times we don't agree, but we never take the time to hear it.
Yeah.
So we don't know if we really disagree or we just don't like the way the message was sent.
Yeah. Well, that's important because I often think of my grandfather, and I was just sharing with my wife, I'm just honored that I had a chance to know my grandfather's father who came out of slavery, and I had a chance to know my grandmother's mother who had been an ex-slave. And one of the things my grandfather used to tell me with a smile on his face, he used to say, you know, old people don't get old by being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought about that because there's wisdom to listening,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's important that when you live long enough, you feel like you earn the right to say
Mm-hmm.
what's on your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and people benefit from that when you live in an environment. So when so many people want to hide and cover and be hypocritical and say what they think is appropriate, but not what they really think or what they
Mm-hmm.
mean. And so I think that's important. You know, one day when I was a young elected official and I was running for reelection in D.C., a man came to me and after work one day, he came to me quiet and he said, you know, Mr. Warren, he says, I agree with you and I want to support you. He says, but I got a wife and a family and a mortgage
Mm-hmm.
and kids and I have to go with the program. And I said, you know what? I really respect that. You do what you have to do in terms of your job. I'm going to do what I have to do on your behalf, even though you can't be there for me. And so that's what we got to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
The society today wants you to focus on your individual self.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest detriments of that is the cell phone
Mm-hmm.
because people will walk around and they won't look up. They get on the elevator. The first thing they do is whip out the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And you get on a you get on a shuttle. I'm at the airport. I get on a shuttle from the parking lot to the airport, and all the people there, 9 out of 10 people got their phones in front of them. I'm saying, you know, you can't look up. You can't walk across the street, almost getting hit by a car,
Mm-hmm.
and so you are avoiding human contact.
Mm-hmm.
And human contact is a part of what makes life complete for us.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the final analysis of where we are, I see that we're having an impact from the pandemic. You know, I literally see people that don't no longer want to remove their masks, not because of health reasons or trying to be safe, but because it's become another wall that they have put up over themselves. Some people are rapping totally as another wall to not deal with connecting with people. We must get back to the connection piece. And for me, myself, I've been just reaching out to different people and elders and young people and saying, hey, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Having the conversations because at the end of the day, you know, Dr. Warren, as young as we are, we're not going to be here forever.
No.
And we have to make sure that even in the sense of sometimes not being heard or even appreciated for what we're saying, to at least do it because I know there's a lot of times that my mother told me some things and some of my elders have told me some things and I just looked at them like boo boo the fool. They don't know what they're talking about. Oh, but my mother used to say, but keep on living.
Yeah, keep saying good
And,
morning.
and you keep living, you will understand in the by and by. And I was like, Lord Jesus, here we go with the by and by.
Yeah, that's whole spiritual. You know,
Yeah.
Dr. Thompson, this whole discussion that we had this having this evening, it wasn't on the agenda, but it's so important because it's the kind of discussion that we need to have. I just come from doing a webinar town hall meeting with Health and Human Services
Mm-hmm.
for San Diego County, and we were dealing with behavioral science, and we were talking about the impact of the pandemic on people. You know, a lot of people have been isolated. A lot of people are isolated. You know, I found in clergy that so many times when you see people on a Sunday, and as a pastor, you hug them. For a lot of people, that's their only human contact for the whole week.
Yeah.
Is that hug, and that hug is important to them.
Yeah.
You know, because we are designed to interact with each other. We're designed to see each other,
Mm-hmm.
and not to be isolated or to live in solitary confinement. And so we're headed down a road where we're going to have a lot of mental health issues in years to come because so many people are choosing to stay isolated. They're not getting married. They're not forming up the partnerships and relationships, and so they get off into things that are not healthy.
Can I jump in and say,
Sure.
people are building temporary relationships and temporary lifestyles so that they can change based on emotions and feelings. And nobody seems to be wanting to live a permanent or a connected life. So they live it on social media because every day you can be somebody different. Every day you can throw on a filter. Every day you can have something that's profound or whatever that you post. But at the end of the day, they're living in a fantasy world. We have to get our
and the safety precautions that we had to go through, even though things have let up, a lot of people have not come back to church
yeah.
physically. A lot of people are just staying online, and that's a disconnect. And so we really have much to do. You know, we didn't get a chance to talk to a lot of folks this evening. I don't know if we had them call in, but these are the kind of conversations that a society is supposed to have. Even our most primitive societies, if you go back to, say, some of the early Indian groups in on the East Coast, up in North, like where the Mohawks were. If you go into the South Pacific, in areas like the Samoan and other tribes live, when those communities built uh, meeting places, huge tents that were meeting places for all the people in the tribe. And we're considering them primitive, but they understood the value of coming together collectively
Yeah.
to make decisions and have discussion. And we've got to get back to that. And unless we do, we're not going to get the kind of voter participation that we want because we're not connected. And so it's hard for people once every 2 years or 4 years just jump up and go through the motions when they're not connected.
Yeah.
And we hope this program that we do and the paper and GOD radio and all of the things that we're reaching out for, that we will help reestablish that connection that so many of us need.
And you know, Dr. Warren, I think it's behooving us to begin to look at some of our guests and bring in some of the young men and young women that are actually making a difference in their communities, not only just here locally, but people that are making international impact. I love Tamia Mallory. I think that's her name. With Black Lives Matter
Okay.
and the different thing, and I like her because it seems like she's always, even when she hits a brick wall, she still comes back. She doesn't quit, and I think that bulldog tenacity is what I'm enjoying about some of our young people. We have some young people, you just breathe on them wrong and they fall out and you don't see them no more. And some older people the same way.
Oh, yes.
You know, I'm gonna take my toys and go home, versus saying, you know what, agree to disagree, but we still gotta work together in our community.
You know, there's a challenge, Dr. Thompson, because we have some people in our community, some young people who are involved and engaged, but for all the wrong reasons.
Uh-huh.
And service is not about self. And
Yeah.
when you talk about service, people look at you like you've been drinking something strange, some strange Kool-Aid. But it's only when we give that we receive, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a good feeling in terms of helping other people. We're moving into this holiday season. Next week we have Thanksgiving. We're going to be doing this once feeding some folks like they're not hungry the other 51 weeks of the year. And we're going to be moving into Christmas, and we're going to have people depressed and going through all kind of anxieties because of the difference between the Hallmark moment they see and what they remember and how they're living, or what they didn't live and didn't have. And we just need to get beyond all of that. And I think it's important. And I noticed this week I talked about Black people and Black Friday editorially. And at the same time I was doing that, one of my colleagues back east was doing also a piece, and we hadn't collaborated on a Black Friday and what does it mean, you know, to Black people.
And why is it black? You know.
Yeah. And I tell them why it's black. It's not because of our color. It's black because that's the color of profit, as opposed to red being the color of loss.
Yeah. And can I say this, Dr. Warren?
Yes.
It's so funny because I when I look at Christmas, back when I was young and a kid, I looked forward to Christmas. And as I got older, you know, Christmas took on a whole different meaning for me. But the thing that I started laughing about is I had a conversation. I said to my wife, I said, you know why Christmas is not that big a deal to me, other than the symbolic birth of Christ, and that's the most important thing.
Right.
I said, because whatever we kind of want, we could get throughout the year. So
Yeah.
we don't wait for one big
You don't
year.
have to wait. Yeah.
And
You don't
so
wait.
I encourage you all, don't make Christmas or these special holidays the one time that you do a big meal or give out gifts. Do something all year long, so when Christmas comes, it's not, I got to go broke. to make everybody happy versus I got you something and they're happy.
Yeah, and you don't need to go through all of that. You know, I always remind people there are two scriptures in the Bible that really turn out to make this important. One is John 3:16, for God so loved the world he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believe in him should not perish and have everlasting life. But the second scripture that comes to mind is Luke 6:38. And Luke 6:38 says, give and it shall be given unto you, good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over, will he cause men to give to your bosom. Love is about giving.
Yeah.
And that means we're doing it all time. You know, when we look in Galatians, we see the fruit of the Spirit, love, kindness, and we see his long suffering and all of those things that come together. And when we move back into this arena, it's going to change how we feel. It's going to change our makeup. It's going to change our value. It's going to change what we're at peace with. And we're not going to be running, chasing a hallmark moment or thinking that we got to live for the 7 days of Kwanzaa when, Yom Kippur. We just need to live for each day, doing what we can. So as the song says, our living will not have been in vain.
Amen, amen. Well, Dr. Warren, believe it or not, we are at the end of our time for tonight. I want to thank you. I'm going to try to get this Zoom and everything worked out. But in the meantime, we're going to keep on broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. And we're going to see what the future holds, because I believe that we'll be going into a national syndication opportunity very, very soon. And big news on the forefront.
Yes.
Well,
all right. Thank
with that
you.
being said, this is from the desk of the editor with Dr. John Warren, right here on GODRadio1.com.